Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 12th of December. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some standout strands to look out for, which we can all relate to collectively, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in much greater detail each of the 12 zodiac signs. Now, as this week begins, a truly notable event. Mercury recently moved into the rather business-like sign of Capricorn, enters its shadow period. This is the period before the retrograde begins, which is on the 29th of December. It comes out of that on the 18th of January. But if we are dealing with anything that is more to do with those worldly affairs, it is going to be important to really manage the detail. But despite this, later this week, Mercury does forge a sparkling alliance with Uranus. And it's suggesting this combination that if we can think of new and fresh ways to approach our worldly interactions, even at this late stage of the year, perhaps the shadow period and then the retrograde is asking us to rethink or flex in new ways, which can actually be really valuable to us. Now, also, right at the start of the week, Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of fortune, are just in a square. This runs over from the previous week. It could give us an opportunity to be very generous to someone. Maybe we can get together with people that we have a kinship with, particularly actually through those worldly interactions with Venus in the 10th house. But this is a week when the Sun does square up with Neptune. If you remember, this began on the last day of last week. The Sun in the sign of Sagittarius is very much about discovery, adventure, independence, travel, higher knowledge, philosophies, and even education can be around the rule of law. Neptune, of course, is very much to do with dreams. It's a very mystical influence, and at its best can have quite a magical impact. But I think this particular influence can see us amplify or exaggerate our senses, even if they're not conscious. So if something just puts us in a bit of a spin, there could be a tendency to buy into it a little bit too much. Ironically, Jupiter, the other ruling planet of Pisces, along with Neptune, is in a sensational link with Pluto for the whole of this week. If there is something that you've been working on in a physical way for a long time that has required a great deal of patience, it could be your links with someone that have been developing, perhaps not so much at a tangible level, more an instinctive level. There could be someone that your association with can actually end up being very fortunate indeed. And from Monday through to Thursday, the Sun's in a very constructive link with Saturn. This can offset some of the distortion the Sun's right angle with Neptune can create. And remember, with that Mercury shadow period, managing details is important. So what Saturn is doing with the Sun here is asking us to be a bit more detached, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is airy, to think through our ideas for expansion, but research them in a very thorough and step-by-step way. And that can push back some of the dissipating energy of Neptune square to the Sun, which can drain a little bit of vitality from proceedings. Now, on Saturday, there is a quarter moon in the precise sign of Virgo. This is just saying to us, if we do feel that we want to help out or volunteer or assist people in some kind of ways, that's very laudable. We just need to make sure in the following week that we're not promising to do something that actually becomes a bit of a bind to deliver on, perhaps around those festive arrangements. But right at the end of this week, it's the Sun that comes into Jupiter, into a square with Jupiter, replacing Venus. And this is an aspect really that can actually have a very generous side to it. If we can find ways to embrace the more traditional festive strands of looking out for those who are less fortunate, of just small but important gifts, these type of things actually could really have quite an impact on the recipient. But it's also saying to us not to get too caught up in trying to be too much of a people pleaser, I think, around our budget if we are facing some financial realities which are tricky. I think we need to stick with what we feel really comfortable with. But there could be some kind of discussion at the end of this week where you find yourself talking about something where you have a very different worldview from the person that you're discussing this issue with, but actually you can gain or learn something from what could even be a disagreement if you're open to the possibility. Now, we're nearly in 2023. What will the year hold for you as an individual? You can gain a lot from the zodiac forecasting for sure, but it's your personal astrology which is really crucial. If you give me your time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for the coming year. And this will give you searing insights as to when planetary influences are impacting on your natal chart. But also my special package of 30% off, you can get your life roadmap, character analysis report. Please see the link below. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love you to subscribe. If you're an ongoing follower, thank you so much for joining me once more. Now, here is your in-depth forecast for each sign. So Leo, your week commencing the 12th of December forecast sees the sun still in your sister fire sign of Sagittarius. And it is in a very productive link with Saturn in your sector of relating. Saturn's taught you a lot of lessons, I feel, over the last couple of years. You may have experienced situations where you felt people were cool, withdrawn, set unreasonable boundaries, but perhaps it's given you an opportunity to firm up how you interact with others and make it clearer about what you will or won't do. So the sun's angle to Saturn is brilliant if you're really wanting to get closer in a more constructive way with someone that you're collaborating with, particularly over a creative project. It could even be good for your love life. What's not to like? Well, it's just that although Jupiter is forging a very good link with Pluto this week, and Jupiter's in your 8th house of devotion, shared finances and so forth, the fact is Neptune in the same sector of your chart is actually forging quite a destructive angle to the sun. So I think if your love life isn't so good, or you're not quite so clear, or perhaps there's some jealousy or control issues or leverage going on around some kind of relationship, perhaps the energy of Saturn and the Sun is just going to see you really be quite steely about what you will or will not accept. Because I think Neptune distorts, and if you feel that someone's not really putting the same amount of effort in as you, that could make you think again. Also, the quarter moon on Saturday is saying to you, look, when it comes to your Christmas budget, try not to go beyond what you've agreed with yourself, because it could be that someone is really going to pull on your heartstrings. It may be very, very hard to resist, but it's probably best if you do. In a very positive way, although Mercury goes into its pre-retrograde shadow this week on Monday, it forges a cracking link with Uranus later in the week. Any kind of job which is in technology or to do with being more progressive or anticipating where a market may go, which can be linked also with your attention to detail, could actually be something that's really worth checking out. It's just with the Sun squaring up with Jupiter as the week draws to a close, very important to ensure that any expectations that you're beginning to develop or anything you're saying to anyone that you may be able to deliver to them is within your scope, when you're not caught up in perhaps too much enthusiasm, because the Sun squaring Jupiter can see us perhaps promising more than is easy to deliver.